it was during COVID, and as a travel writer, that was when my travel writing ended. Was during COVID. It was really nothing. So I was bored out of my gourd. Ian and I would often throughout the course of a year, I'd be in Vancouver, he'd be in Calgary, so we'd see each other, but we were just kind of locked down. Ian and I are both fans of big greasy breakfasts, like at some diner. So we couldn't do that. So I called up Ian and I said, let's do something together. Let's do a project together. And Ian had worked in film and television and theater, and he knew actors. Excuse me. So Ian was the one who came up with the character Miranda Abbott, although it wasn't originally Miranda. And he came up with this idea of this former actress. And Ian can speak to that, where those characters, because they're very rich characters from his own background. And the fact that it wasn't originally Miranda who was the head.
I was fascinated by actors who still thought they were famous when they weren't famous anymore. They'd be doing a dinner theater in Regina, but still imagining that they're famous, even though they weren't. I won't say any names of actual, because that's just mean. But I mean, I remember some of the dinner theaters in Western Canada, you'd have you'd get the entire cast of a canceled TV show would come through over this season, and here's the guy who played the sidekick. And originally the idea was that it was a male actor named Nick Abbott, who had been a crime-fighting pastor. I sort of like the idea of like mysteries about, like Father Brown mysteries and stuff like that are always gentle. But I thought the idea of having a two-fisted crime-fighting pastor, but the show's long gone. His house gets repossessed. He loses everything, and he gets a note from his wife, who he's never bothered divorcing, inviting him to come to a small town. And we were that was sort of the original idea, was to start with that. And early on, I thought, no, it just seemed like it's very similar to, I think, what Will said about 419 is Will started off with the idea that 419 would be a funny, wacky story about 419 scams. And this started off, that just seemed so limiting. And I had the idea, I called Will up. I don't think we'd even outlined anything yet. We were just still jamming on the idea. And I said, no, we got to flip it. It's got to be Miranda Abbott. And she was Pastor Fran, and her husband runs the bookstore in the town of Happy Rock. So I'm fairly sure we were really early on, Will?
It wasn't quite working. There was something that wasn't quite there. Yeah. And I think it was originally, it was Nick Abbott, Pastor Fred, I think, or Frank, Pastor Frank. And Ian called me up and said, we got to switch this up. And it really changed the feel of the story.
Well, I think that a narcissistic male actor, you don't have a lot of sympathy for him, as much as you would for a woman who's coming from that same background. And also it added an element of sort of pathos to it, because the unfortunate truth, I think, is that in show business, Hollywood, male actors are allowed to age, and female actors not so much.
Ian would tell me, I'm like, no way. He would tell me more. Like, I'd say, what kind of characters are in the theater? And he would start talking about the certain types. And he would tell me stories. Many of them are not in the book, but it was me going, no, really? And he goes, yes. So Ian drew on all kinds of his own experiences for that casting.
Yeah, there's it was funny. We read a book event, and our I think one of our publishers or somebody who was there, and they were just aghast at the following story that I'm about to tell, which is somebody asked where the characters in the book came from, and I said, look, it's just, we're creative, we come up with stuff. For example, there's a character in the book named Graham Penty, who went to a conservatory acting program and ended up teaching high school drama in the small town of Happy Rock. And he's not at all based on my friend Alan Penty, who went to a conservatory acting program, ended up teaching high school drama in Victoria, which she was just, have we cleared this? She thought he was going to get sued. And he actually loved it, although he was reading the book at the cottage. And halfway through, he called me and said, I think I'm a suspect. So he was, but some of it's from actual people, but it's just, theater is odd and eccentric at any level. But when you get into community theater, people who are doing it, for the love of. The true meaning of the word amateur is love of. It gets really, really odd. And there's, so that was just, me just regaling Will with backstage antics, like the idea that you would audition at the same time, so everybody knows that the best person got the part. There's no favoritism. Now, that doesn't happen in the world of professional theater. If somebody tried that, agents and managers would be on the phone shutting that operation down. So I think Will had the idea of, let's just take it one step further, and they not only audition in front of each other, there's an audience watching them. So you just take, I think that's humor, is you just take a real situation and just tip it over a little bit, and it gets even more ridiculous.
Well, I think Ian and I both love, the one thing we really love is cheesy, 80s and 90s detective shows. So we came up with it's her show. And that was actually one of the funnest parts. We never explain her show, Pastor Fran, but it's insane. We just give hints and references to what they did. So by the time Ian and I were done piling it up and making it funnier and funnier, it was Father Brown meets Murder, She Wrote meets Charlie's Angels. So she's a priest who wears a collar and a bikini and does karate chops and solves mysteries with her mind. And every episode ends with her hitchhiking out of town. But we never give you the full show. Pastor Fran investigates. We just allude to it, references to episodes. And the fun part about that is we have no Bible for that show. Just so you know, whatever was funny, that was in the show. So the fact that the titles always give away the ending. So it'd be like the case of the poisoned lariat. And the surprise is the lariat was poisoned.
The case of the trapdoor Toreador. He escapes through a trapdoor.
And the guest stars from the 80s and 90s. And so we love that world of really cheesy detective shows. So once we lay out, you have the world and you have the characters, and you lay out the mystery. And Ian reads mysteries. So this was his milieu, was the setting out mysteries and how many suspects to have. But on top of that was the world of TV, network TV that is now past. And I think that's what added a lot of fun to it. And also remember, one of the outs that we get as writers is that keeping Miranda Abbott, the person, distinct from Pastor Fran, her TV characters, she doesn't keep them straight. She herself can't decide whether she's Miranda Abbott or Pastor Fran. So the fun about that was we didn't really bother distinguishing between the two, other than Miranda Abbott is a bit of a drinker, and Pastor Fran is a little more active. She thinks she is Pastor Fran. She imagines that she is.
The sequel is called Mystery in the Title, and it's coming out in Canada in May, I believe. What happens is a really bad movie of the week comes to shoot in Happy Rock. And now this is a spoiler alert. Be prepared. There's a murder, and Pastor Fran has to solve it. I think that sort of takes care of everything, doesn't it? Yeah.
The second one is about movies of the week. So basically Hollywood comes to Happy Rock,